Hi, good morning, everybody. I am Ernesto Burden. I'm the publisher of New Hampshire Business Review and one of your panelists on today's Business Review webinar, Marketing Challenges in a Rebounding Economy. We really appreciate you being here, and hopefully as we go along, any questions that you have that can help us make this a more valuable presentation to you. You feel comfortable to type into the questions chat, and we will try and field those. If not, right as they come up, then as we get into a discussion later. I am here with Linda Fanaras, who is the CEO and strategist of Millennium Integrated Marketing. Has offices in Manchester and Boston. Linda is a highly driven marketing strategist. I'm not going to read all this because her biography is deep and rich enough that it would, I would rather hear her talking, but she's brilliant. We're really glad she's here, and we really appreciate Millennium sponsoring and making it possible for us to get on as well. So that said, Linda.
Sure. So my name is Linda Fanaras, and I am the CEO and strategist of Millennium Agency. We are a strategic marketing firm, and we're highly focused on working with companies to help accelerate their growth. And obviously, we use a lot of the current mediums that are out there now, whether digital or offline strategies. And we tend to use a very integrated approach to build out campaigns that are effective. We've been in business for about 23 years, and we're a woman-owned business, and we're part of a National Ad Agency Association, which they really take a deep dive into our best practices and financial stability and so on and so forth. These are just a few of the, and I don't need to talk about these, but these are just a few of the awards and recognitions that we've received over the years. Some are creative and digital ads. Some are like the top New Hampshire 200. So that's it on that one.
Yeah, well, thank you and welcome, and so much appreciated.
Pleasure to be here.
So for the folks out there, we're going to start with some data that we're going to walk through that's talking about sort of the what people are doing, what marketers are doing right now in terms of marketing spend, where they see their marketing spend going, and the types of messaging that they're thinking are really important. And then we're going to get into how of it, and Linda's going to dive more deeply into some specific how questions in terms of public relations, social media, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some other topics, including video, email marketing, and we'll see how much more time permits. Obviously, it's a huge conversation that we could fill days with. Well, if you guys are up for it, we'll be happy to sit here. No, yes, we can. Anyway, starting with some optimistic news. This just came across my feed the other day. There was a trade show, an event, and for any of the folks out there who have event marketing as a part of their plan, this brings the same kind of smile to your face as it did to mine to see that even in this evolving situation with a global pandemic, trade shows are coming back, and I believe this one was a bridal show and happened a couple days ago. And 3-day show, 25 people a day going through it, and as I understand it, went off without a hitch. So I think a very bright spot to start with. So shifting marketing landscape, Linda, you must be seeing sort of on the client side, people looking at doing things differently than they were doing before.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's happened over the last couple of months is, I mean, we were all on an upswing, and then all of a sudden everybody came to a halt. So we really, I think we've seen, and including ourselves as well, everybody has had to take a step back and sort of reevaluate what they're doing, what makes sense, and how to adjust for this pandemic that we're in. And while we were in this pandemic, our clients were and everyone else was just learning about it, and how can we adjust our marketing efforts to, handle some of this. And we've noticed a lot have had to make a really quick pivot to the digital side, where maybe before they weren't in the digital side as much or as heavily. But we're seeing companies really even retooling their entire organization to adjust for this.
Yeah. What are some of the drivers that you're saying folks are shifting digitally? And I can think of some reasons that, for example, we at McLean had to shift some things digitally, specifically with events that we host. But what are some of the other things that are driving that?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great question. So we have clients that do training, physical training. So they've had to retool their entire business to provide online training. And although they'll still continue to offer the physical training, the big focus now is how do we address this differently? How can we maintain our business? Because some of these businesses have gone from millions of dollars to zero. So how can we retool our business quickly in order to adjust? So that's one example of one company that did, a great deal of training throughout the United States, even some globally, and now they've had to retool. That's required a lot of immediate and quick changes to address that. So definitely online tools and things like that. And I think we're seeing a lot of that with Zoom and webinars and all other things that everybody has had to take advantage of recently.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's, a point that sort of leapt out at me about what you just said is that even those businesses that you're describing that were seeing revenues really drop off, rather than stop working with you on marketing projects, they shifted what they were doing with their marketing projects.
Yeah.
And that sort of dovetails with what, some of the data that I wanted to share with folks today, in terms of what people are doing. First, during the outbreak, as things were really sort of getting very dramatic, and it was clear that this was going to change things for business and for life in general around the world. Consumers still wanted to see marketing. They wanted the businesses, the brands that they rely on to continue to communicate with them. Another thing that's interesting to note is that, in a crisis, even though consumer confidence drops off, consumer spending continues to rise. People are just spending money in different places. And so I think it's, I think that also sort of informs marketing efforts, because you're aware that it's not that people aren't going to spend money, even if they're scared, but how are they going to spend money, and how do you hold on to the market share? Businesses succeed when they invest in marketing during periods of crisis. Somewhere out there, at least one person in the audience is thinking, and maybe more, they're like, okay, so this guy is the publisher of magazine and newspapers, and so it is in his best interest to point out that one should continue to market themselves during tough times. And that is true, but I point this out also because it is true, and there's a lot of data that shows that companies that continue to market through difficult periods actually benefit from the fact that other people pull back, and so there's even more space out there. This example is Kellogg during the Depression doubled its ad budget. Some of you may have seen this. It's a fairly standard example, but they ended up coming out of that period of time with the most market share. And Linda, you had some other examples.
Yeah,
too.
and I think McDonald's and Burger King are, there's many examples like that. And I guess what I do want to point out, because we fully recognize and respect the fact that this has been such a big deal that companies, frankly, are just trying to keep their employees employed. So marketing is like, no, I'm not going there. But some of the tactics and strategies that we'll talk about today will include ways that you can continue to market in a cost-effective way, so you can continue to keep your name out there and maintain some brand awareness while you are actually sort of recalibrating your company, taking a look at your marketing strategy and some of the other factors involved. And that will help you sort of elevate yourself compared to some of the others companies that are out there that are just frankly, everybody's scrambling, but just frankly being silent. And that's really the end goal here, is to try to look beyond that and be more focused on keeping your name out there so you can, come out on top when you're done.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that the word that jumps out at me there is silent. And I think that no matter how you sort of refocus marketing efforts, I think not being silent is an important one. Another example, GM right after September 11th, invested in marketing, did a huge incentive, a 0% loan on its cars and trucks, and that sort of jump-started the entire industry. Media consumption is up right now in general, and that I think that that's relevant too, and that there's a lot more space out there, a lot more impressions available, so to speak, and and fewer people consuming those impressions. So in general, you have this larger audience with less ad clutter, which is an opportunity, but not an opportunity that lasts forever. This data comes from a company called Burrell Associates that does research. They do research and analysis, work with a lot of small businesses in terms of understanding how they're doing marketing. And I do hope that gradual return to normal line is as soon as they're projecting here. But I think even if it goes a little bit longer than that, the message is still the same, which is there is an opportunity, and not to be callous, I think, but more just practical, that there is an opportunity for visibility now that will change as things get back to normal. A lot of people are looking at changing messaging up, which is critical. But the big question is how much people are looking at changing that messaging. And I think that the data from this particular survey that we were looking at suggested that the majority of people are tweaking their focus and messaging, but fewer believe that they have to drastically change the way that they do all their marketing forever for the rest of the time. There's a sort of moderation that's developing around this, and while at the same time that they do need to create content and campaigns that are a direct response to the pandemic, in terms of things like, when are we reopening, what precautions are we taking when we reopen, and then down the road, what are special offers that we have that are going to bring you into our business. And we were talking about this earlier, Linda, and you had suggested you're seeing this reflected sort of on the ground, people you're talking to.
Yes, we definitely have, and this is something that we've recommended, particularly for our PR clients and our content clients, primarily because, the first thing that you want to do in an instance like this is you need to be empathetic. People are scared and they're very concerned. So you really want to be empathetic in your messaging and not go out there and say, let's buy some, buy beauty products or buy this or buy that. People are like, are you kidding me? Like, that's not on my mind right now. It's just really safety. So being empathetic and being concerned with the consumers that are out there is number one. I think the second component of this is that we're seeing now is, as businesses start to open up, it's combining that messaging and starting to shift that toward taking precautions. Like, what type of precautions are we taking? We're following CDC guidelines. We're following state guidelines. We are ensuring that, we are safe here, and that we are we're taking these steps in order for you to maintain safety as well. And then I think what we're envisioning after this is a little bit more of, okay, this is the way it's going to be now. So everybody has accepted the way it's going to be, and we don't all exactly know what that will be. And once that's done and completed, then you can start to integrate more of a strategy, an advertising strategy of how you can get your message across, because some of that will be almost like old news because it's just the way it is, frankly. And then you can start to really get like a message across that makes sense to the way that you've either recalibrated your business, or that maybe you've adjusted some things in your business that you do need to get across, and you've changed your messaging, as Ernesto has mentioned, and other factors. And that's sort of that third component. So we sort of see this broken down into 3 areas.
Yeah. Do you see, and I think we probably get to this in a minute, but do you see so we're sort of somewhere in between stage 1 and stage 2, as you sort of identified that?
We're seeing more shifting as states are opening up and more businesses are opening up. We're seeing more of a shift to so yes, the answer to that is yes, and we are seeing more of a shift to number 2. I mean, we have clients, frankly, right now that are so busy because some companies have really benefited from this. They've asked us to take down, like which is crazy, their contact us page, or they don't want any more business because they're so busy, because everything just opened back up and people are just going crazy. So I think that it is dependent on the business and the type of business in order to determine what the messaging will be. But that's sort of, if I was to put it into buckets, those would be the 3 buckets that would make sense.
Actually, I'm going to save that question. I was going to ask about, if you're seeing any potential fatigue in terms of messaging around the pandemic itself, but I think we have a very natural place to dig into that later. Some of the new Burrell data that came out this week, one of the interesting things is that businesses are adopting new technology for marketing and communications, and this is no surprise. Obviously, that Zoom comes to mind first. We're here on GoToWebinar, but I think video chatting technologies have become pretty ubiquitous. But some things that I don't know that were as obvious right before all this happened is self-service web technology and e-commerce. So companies are investing in updating their websites and creating e-commerce opportunities. I had a colleague in the industry who had wanted to buy a gift certificate to a restaurant for a friend, to a New Hampshire restaurant. And one of the things, because he wanted to support the New Hampshire restaurant industry, and he also wanted to give this gift to his friend. But one of the things that he found as he was going through a bunch of restaurants' websites is many of them did not have an e-commerce opportunity on their site to buy gift cards. And I think that's a thing potentially that leaps out for many businesses now. When you close the doors, is there a way that people can engage with your website? So other thoughts, Linda, on the technology side of things?
No, I think you've covered it. I mean, obviously everybody has had to adopt some of these new technologies, and Zoom is definitely benefiting from this, obviously, as we've seen today. But the other ones are doing quite well as well. So it's just, again, just an adjustment I think everybody has had to make.
Yeah. More advertisers are expecting to, fewer expect to cut back on advertising, I guess is the right way to say that. And I would say marketing generally, people in the beginning, in March, were much more pessimistic than we are now. And I guess we would expect that. The Burrell had sort of done a projection in terms of, overall marketing spend effort, dipped dramatically in the depths of the crisis. It starts to come back. I would argue that it's probably has begun to come back faster than this chart indicated, which was, I think this is about 30 days old now. Some of the messaging that people are that people are focusing on now, number one, businesses are looking to inform customers of new precautions being taken. They're tweaking their creative. And there are some examples of the responses that various businesses gave in terms of the kind of things that they're messaging about. I think one of the things that is really interesting is that, you know, the way that you kind of get these messages across, the tools that you're using, and the fact that some folks increased brand awareness, which is interesting. Linda, do you see that with your folks, that people are more focused on brand awareness? I feel like there was a period of time where it was very response driven.
Right. Yeah, and I think, yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. So sort of part of that three-step process is definitely, I think before all this happened, everybody was focused on increasing sales and generating leads and making sure that people, you know, bought something. And then what happened was it just paused. And I think now what's happening is people, and that Amaret is kind of a good example of an airline that's come out with a new TV spot, which I think is exceptional because they've done a really good job as far as being able to communicate the empathetic part of what's going on, but also saying that, hey, you know, we're gonna like get out of this together. We're gonna work on this together. You can still count on us. You know, we're a company that you can depend on, you know, now and after this. So that type of messaging we're seeing more of, just to get consumers and other businesses putting them at ease. And I think that's, you know, that's going to be key in this transitional period.
Do you want to take a second and show people a little bit of that?
Yeah, I sent the link in the chat of I don't know if you want to grab that. This is kind of.
So this is it, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember when they closed the schools and kids tried to learn online? And when we heard the term social distancing for the very first time? Do you remember when we worked from home and actually missed the office and even the people we didn't get along? When the fun of flying wasn't there for us anymore, we had to be strong. All of those things we took so much for granted were now off limits to us every day. Walk in the park, the other park, kiss. Do you remember when we stayed away from the gyms and watched too much TV, so we put on weight and learned not to hate anything or anybody anymore except COVID-19? Do you remember when the airlines were grounded, which meant we missed our loved ones even more, but the whole world came together and said enough, no more?
So what I did like about this was that they brought the reality to life. I mean, we all know this is the case, and it gave us a little bit of like forward-thinking opportunity that maybe we don't all take advantage of. So I think they did a really tasteful job in this TV spot, and I just like it. And I know some other companies have done types of spots like this as well, and frankly I think they're quite effective. So what it does is it continues to get your brand name out there, but it attaches you like in an empathetic way. And I think that's what we're trying to, you know, do right now. And I think it's quite effective.
You broke up for just a second there, but I think you were saying in an empathetic way.
Yeah, like I think what they're doing is they're bringing the reality to life. You know, some people don't even want to talk about it. But they're bringing the reality of like, this is, you know, what's happening. This will be behind us, and we will be here at the end of all of this, and we will be here front and center to, you know, fly you to wherever you want to go. And we see that as an effective strategy in order to just show that you are, you know, you're still in the game, and that's the key part of, you know, just keeping your name out there during times like this. And frankly, I am well aware it's challenging. But there are ways, which we will cover shortly, of how you can do that.
Yeah. Here, sort of continuing along that theme of content here, of the the messaging. Here's what consumers are saying they want from marketing. How? And again, it's this practical, 3-step area where you're that you were referring to before. Number one is this practical. Are we open? Here's how our services have been changed. Here's how you can access us. And then next, sort of here's what we're doing to be safe. The one thing that we think that will shift pretty quickly is that as things open up, that messaging, consumers are going to be wanting to hear, we've got it. That right now it's way down on the list, but shortly it's likely that they will want more of that, and this sort of underscores that. A good point is that when we're coming out of the Great Recession, that's when Groupon launched. People were looking for deals, and their sort of nervous consumer confidence generated a great opportunity for companies that could be perceived to be offering unique things for folks to think about for a marketing mix. What's happening with your on-property messaging, image, social media posts and ads, website improvement. I think it's always the right time to be thinking about your website. But certainly, if you have an e-commerce opportunity that's not being leveraged right now, that's probably a good one to start with. And then, of course, mass media advertising. And I want to skip, though, up to some of the material that we're going to dive deep into, Linda.
Sure.
And sorry, because I think that sort of sets a foundation for some of the how here.
Yeah, and I think, the way that we've tackled this is really like, how can you keep your name out there in an effective, inexpensive way that maintains some brand awareness for your company and allows you to build upon something once things loosen up a little bit more. So PR is a huge component, and obviously content has been also a very large component, which has been taken advantage of through social media and other mediums. But I'll give you some examples as we walk through this on some things that we've seen and that we've worked with on our clients to help them really step above the others. So PR, public relations, is a great way, and I think it's people, I don't want to say it's discounted, but people don't really think about it all the time as part of their marketing mix. They think of it as like a separate thing. Well, I'm not advertising, but how do I do PR? We'll chat a little bit about that today. But what it does is it really gives the opportunity to have an objective third party, sort of speak on your behalf, and that in itself is very powerful. So as part of the marketing mix that you have, it's still a good opportunity for you to take advantage of that. And let's just say your company gave away 10,000 masks, or maybe you donated some money to a shelter. I mean, those are types of things that really deserve some attention, and it gives you the opportunity to take advantage of that and get your word out. So it allows you to increase awareness, whether it's on a statewide basis or a national basis or regional basis, depending on the publications that you're going to engage in. But it's a great way to just tie all these pieces together and have sort of another angle in your marketing mix that can be very effective. I'll hit next. So I wanted to just give you, for those who maybe are not that familiar with PR, and because people will say, well, I don't really know what to say. Like, what would I do? What kind of things should it be in a press release, or why would I try to secure a story? So obviously news releases are key. That's sort of the definite idea. And you can use a news release as a springboard to maybe get a story. So let's say, for example, you did donate 25,000 masks within the state of New Hampshire, and you write a news release on that. Well, that's an opportunity for a publication to do a great story on your company. And I think if you look at it from that perspective of what are we doing that's good, what are we doing that's unique, and it needs to be new, newsworthy for sure. And that's a little bit of a tricky thing, and some people do struggle with that a little bit, because you don't want to brag about yourself, because frankly, editors and reporters do not care about that. But what they do care about, things that maybe it's a new employee, or maybe you've done a donation, or maybe you just released a really great white paper on some outlook data, or trending data on your industry. Any awards that you may have gotten, or employees that have received awards, or case studies that you've done, or donations, to my point prior. But you almost want to look at these things organically and see if there is an opportunity to actually do a news release. And if there is, you definitely want to do it, as it doesn't take a lot of time. And as long as you have some relationships established, it can be quite effective.
I certainly, and something that occurs to me, I'm curious if you've seen any change in this, but this is another one of those things that there's a bright spot amidst what I see as sort of a tragic circumstance, which is that the news business, the newspaper business, for example, which I spent much of my career in, has been hit terrifically hard by this situation, but the newspaper business has been hit hard for a number of years, even prior to this, and so there are smaller staffs in newsrooms than there were 10 or 15 years ago, typically by a lot. Are there situations where if you write a the better you create a news release, the more that it follows the rules of what a news story would follow, in terms of its finding a good angle, being written in the way that a news story is written, and not having a bunch of superlatives or the best, but more sticking to the facts. Are smaller papers or smaller outlets in general more likely to just pick that up and run with it, even if they don't assign somebody to write a story about it?
Absolutely. Like even, a lot of papers like to pick up like new employees, or definitely promotions. So if you do a photo and a promotion of somebody, that typically gets actually published, which is great for the individual that's actually getting promoted, or was that was hired. So that's just a simple way to, again, get your employee's name out and your company's name out.
Yeah, and I see that. I see that also as a, it's effective in a number of ways, because not only are you going to get that person's name out in that publication and on their website, but your newspapers and other news outlets are highly, highly regarded from a search engine optimization perspective. They have really high page ranks, and that means a business name that otherwise might not be there in search can be there.
Exactly.
Let's see. I'm seeing some questions come in. We will get to those shortly. So, but it looks like there are some good ones. So, next slide. Are we still?
Yeah, so I think, just on the social media component, I think many of you are already familiar with this. There's why do you want to do social media? Like, why is it important? Because I think a lot of companies find that we don't have time, or they might post something one and then they may post it like 2 weeks later. You do want to build some consistency around your social posts, particularly, your organic posts. So dedicate yourself to maybe 2 or 3 times a week if you can. And again, it's just a way to continue communicating. And that's key. That's really what this is all about. It provides great customer service opportunity. It helps to build some loyalty with your existing base. You can use it as a way to collaborate and really hear what people are saying and thinking. And you can use it as an opportunity to do research. And on the targeted leads component that you see in here right now, that's really on the advertising side, the paid side. And that can be super effective. We have seen some incredible results with paid social media combined with organic, because organic can be a little tricky as it just pretty much just scrolls through your page without much, without much focus on it. But the paid can be highly targeted and very effective.
Do you see an advantage for different types of businesses to do that kind of paid post boosting or paid marketing on social media on different platforms? For example, are there businesses who might be focusing on Facebook who might be better off with LinkedIn, for example?
Yeah, and yes, and we see that a lot, because I think the hot ones are really Facebook, LinkedIn. People are taking advantage of Instagram and Twitter. But the key is to really look at the target market and who you're trying to, target. And if you're a retail store, something like Facebook can be extremely effective. But if you're a B2B company, you want to look at something like LinkedIn. So the way to tackle that is to figure out, okay, who am I trying to sell to, really? Who do I want to sell to? And then what platforms, social platforms out there would really match up with what I'm trying to do here. And once you determine that should really be your focus. And some of the other ones, if you can't handle all of them, you focus on the ones that really make sense for your company and make sense for your product or your service that you're trying to sell.
So we joked about this earlier, but when are you guys going to launch marketing on TikTok?
I know.
I've heard they've extended the age range.
I know the age range is changing. We haven't had any clients that have asked for anything around TikTok yet. It's just really starting to escalate, and a lot of kids are on it right now. So sort of with Snapchat, obviously, as we've seen that just take off as well. But we don't have any really predictions on any of that at this point.
I do think it's it's interesting that if this is sort of not on the radar of anybody out there, it probably wouldn't hurt to download it and take a look at it as a marketer, just to see. I think it's sort of changing or sort of creating a new communication style. We're back also to this idea of vertical video, which is an interesting. It rises up every once in a while and then sort of gets pushed back down again. But I think TikTok is influencing that. And you've got brands on there now like Chipotle, the NBA, Washington Post, NBC. So interesting.
It's amazing.
So customer service? How are people doing customer service on social?
I mean, I think the way that they're handling it is if there's anything that's changed with their service. For example, like I said, we have one client that frankly they do installations for pools and they can't take anymore. So using social media as a way to get the word out, and obviously in a nice way, because it's almost crazy to say we can't take any more business. But using that as a platform to get that word out is key. And that way you can just be seen as a company that's engaged with their customer base. They care about their customer base, and they want to keep them informed, and they want to communicate with them as frequently or effectively as possible. And that's, I guess, one example of how they've used it as a customer service tool. And I think some other companies like dentist firms are having to switch to teledentistry. And that's really changing the way people have to go to a dentist. Same with physicians, they're getting their emergency visits and they're getting their maybe new patient check-ins through telemedicine. And then when they actually need an appointment, that's when they'll come in. So they've taken this opportunity to just, again, recalibrate their business with this in mind, and how can we make some changes to either make it more convenient for the consumer and make it easier on us as well.
Next slide.
Yeah.
Okay.
So on the PR side, we talked a little bit about some of the news sort of items that you can use as stories as a way to get your name out there. But the way to really be effective with we find with working with the media is to build out a list, because everything's related around your target market, who you're really trying to target and how you're trying to get to them. So not every publication makes sense for you. So you want to take a look at that and build a media list that would make sense for you. And within those media lists, there are actually, reporters and editors that may speak or write about your type of business and maybe what you're trying to get across. So if you're a business, let's say you're a retail business, is just a small example, you might want to talk to a business editor, or you might want to talk to maybe you have a human interest story. You want to make sure that you connect with the right reporter who actually find value in the story that you're presenting. So once you determine your media list, that's really your go-to guide, and that's where your news release would get sent to, and then followed up with, which can be tricky. So on the follow-up part, because no one's really in the office anymore, you have to really rely on other sources, and those other sources, which we can't be too shy about, because sometimes people are a little shy about using these other social media sources, is really finding these, editors and reporters on tools like Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, and connecting with them that way. And that is okay. It's acceptable. They expect it, and you will probably yield better results than you hope to. I mean, we've secured some very large, media opportunities, like Forbes as an example, through connections through social media platforms. So you do want to keep that in mind and not be too shy when it comes to tracking down a reporter or an editor.
Yes, I've seen that firsthand as well. I'll say for folks who may not be avid Twitter users, and I think there's still a large number of people in the country who are not avid Twitter users. They may have an account and look at it once a month or whatever, but reporters are very avid Twitter users.
Yes. Yeah.
It skewed way over to they love it. And love using it for research and also for engaging in sources, like you said. So even if you don't use Twitter for anything else, if you're trying to do PR, it's probably worth being on there.
Yeah, I mean, and I think if you think of it from a reporter's perspective, which again is your target market in this instance, I mean, their job is to really stay on top of the news, what's hot and what's coming in. The only way that they can do that today, or the best way that they can do that today, would be through some of these social platforms like Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, because that's where all the latest news is. And so that's where they reside. It's like some people reside in their email box, some people reside via texting.
Yeah.
These individuals tend to reside through a lot of these social media platforms. So just real quick, I mean, here are some Twitter tools that you could look at. They're free if you want to take advantage of some of these to find the right media. There's one called Twitter Grader. You can find them by location and their authority on the web. And Muckrack is another one I'm not sure if you're familiar with. I'm not sure if that's a free tool or not, but you could search and locate journalists by the actual source. So again, you use those tools to initiate an actual connection, a relationship, and then you can look at connecting through Facebook. Facebook tends to be a little bit more personal than Twitter. So if you can initiate a conversation through Twitter, and then yes, let's say you've been successful, then you move to something like Facebook. And other tools are LinkedIn, obviously, that can be highly effective as far as B2B is concerned, as far as for finding journalists or reporters through LinkedIn. So that's definitely a platform that you would want to take advantage of.
Do you think that for people who are doing PR through LinkedIn, does it make a difference if they have a paid account or a premium account, or if they're just using the standard free account?
Yeah, I mean, well, first they'd have to connect with the person, but if they have something that's paid and they can use an in-mail to start the communication with somebody that's important, it's definitely helpful. I mean, although it can cost $70, $80 a month to take advantage of the paid, it can definitely be valuable if this is part of your job and if it's a big part of what your company does.
Okay.
So just to sort of summarize some of this a little bit. We chatted a little bit about, okay, what's a good story? You know, what could be a good story? We like case studies could be one. Let's say you release a white paper. I'm sure there's all types of businesses in this audience today. Could be a donation. So let's just say you did do that donation that we talked about, and you did a video around it, which is super powerful. And even if it's a simple iPhone video, that's okay, as long as it's done tastefully and done well. It's definitely just another medium to get that message out there, and building out the news release with the donation that you've done and maybe a link to the video that you've done, which ideally would reside on something like YouTube. It could even reside on your website, but let's say it resides on your account on YouTube. And maybe there are other pieces that can be tied into that, like an infographic, or maybe you've done a case study and maybe you've written a blog or something else on that whole subject matter. But by taking sort of one example of something that a do-good example, and you use that as an opportunity to build out your story. And from that story, you want to kind of look at it from an integrated perspective. And okay, I'm going to do my news release. I want to do a video. We're going to get it. We're going to build out a case study sheet, and then maybe we'll include it in a blog. We'll include our news release in the blog, and then you're pulling out key factors around that to actually push that, and using all those components in sort of an integrated marketing manner to get that across. So the news release goes out, you push it through social media, you might do an e-blast sending them to, a video blog, and you're using this as an opportunity to increase awareness of your company in a do-good way. So again, it's super inexpensive. It's a great way to take advantage of, the situation that we're in today, and build that awareness and continue to keep your name out there. And then through the news releases, when you're doing a news release, there's many ways to do that. We talked about the social media. We talked about using email. There's many newswire services out there that are available to you. Some can be a little pricey depending on whether you want to go national or regional, but the idea about that is to get your release out in a much bigger, broader way to some of the big the networks out there that you can take advantage of and start to leverage for story opportunities.
Now, while we're on the point of news release, there is one of the questions that came in was very specifically about that. Anne writes, what are some structured tips for writing a news release in terms of length, perspective, etc.?
Yeah, if you're using like a newswire service, you want to keep it under at least 400 words. And the structure, what you really want to do, the best way to really talk about this is an upside down pyramid, and you want to get the who, what, why, where, and the really top end of that is sort of quickly as possible. Like, what is the story about? Why is it important? Why is this special and unique? And the rest of the data that's in that news release just sort of supports that. So it could be a quote, it could be stats or facts that support whatever you're talking about. Again, it could be a link to a video if you have that. And in the bottom part of your news release, it is important to have what we call a news release footer, which is a little bit of an about us on your company, like sort of who you are, what you do, and maybe a link to your website and a phone number and how to get in touch with you. It's not very long, but it's just a quick summary of your company. So the reporter or editor knows like who you are and what you're all about, and they can do a little bit of research before they actually publish this. So you would want to keep that in mind. And there are standard news release formats out there that I'm sure you could Google quickly, just so you know exactly how to do the formats. Because again, they're more apt to look at it and take it seriously if it's written well, if it's written in the right format, if it's been proofread, and if it follows, a lot of the guidelines, which are frankly not that tricky.
Yes, yeah. Some other things that spring to mind from being on the receiving end of news releases as an editor, things that made them harder to work with. If they were written in first person instead of in third person.
Mm-hmm.
So the news release that comes in that says, we're thrilled, and so are our customers, that blah, blah, blah. Not that could never work, but I feel like it immediately requires a lot of extra work to envision it as a news. And then I think I mentioned earlier the rampant superlatives.
Right. Yeah. Those are adjectives. Yeah.
Yeah. It just it makes it hard to work with. So video, infographic, and blog case studies.
Yeah, so I mean, video's hot. I think everybody knows that. I think a lot of people have really turned to video as a way to either just listen in or watch. And it's a great opportunity to take advantage of a medium out there that people really do pay attention to. And there's ways to, you can take this to the next step. So let's say you did a video on something, maybe, let me just take a good example, like a white paper, which might be more academic and educational and provide value to potential customers. So let's say you've done a video on that, and that includes like maybe some stats and maybe a couple case studies integrated and so on and so forth. You can use that opportunity as it resides on your YouTube page to do some digital advertising. I mean, TrueView through Google, the Google platform is great. I mean, it's really inexpensive. Because it's the skippable formats. So if you look and you use things like video advertising to get these messages across, as well as paid search, display, it can be quite effective if they're super targeted. And that's really the key to all of this.
Yeah. With that targeted video, I think there are good opportunities for marketers in over-the-top video now too.
Yeah.
Which for those, it goes by the acronym OTT, and over-the-top video refers to video that is, marketing messages that come into the video that you're getting on your TV through like a Roku or an Apple TV. Not every channel within that ecosystem has network video advertising, but many of them do, and they allow you to really target it in terms of demographic targeting, really targeted video at something less than you'd probably spend on traditional broadcast.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
How about the production of video? Are you finding that there's more tolerance for homemade these days?
There is more tolerance for homemade. Yeah, I think one of our clients they're just doing an exceptional job with all of this. They've just done an exceptional job with it, and they've used video as a way to kind of get that initial message out around COVID. But then they've also used messaging from people who are at home as testimonials, which can also be great. Obviously, some of them, they don't look that great, but if you give them some guidelines, maybe you want it horizontal, you don't want it vertical, they need to be in a well-lit place, they need to have, background. I mean, you have to be smart about how it looks, but yes, definitely a lot more, openness to having videos that are not exactly perfect, which I think is absolutely fine at this point in time.
Yes. I agree. And so this is, how do people put it all together?
Yeah, so again, I think if we just sort of, what you want to, I think ideally it's the key, the messaging is that you want to keep that going as, frequently as possible. And if you're in a situation where, budget is just gone or has been totally brought down to nothing, you want to get all these pieces out on the social networks, now the Facebook, the Twitter, the YouTube, the LinkedIn. You want to send out e-blasts. Let's say we're back to that white paper that we talked about. Send out an e-blast to just announce this white paper that's been released. You put it on the home page, so when somebody gets to your home page, they know that you released this white paper. And you also want to take advantage of ideally, and I think people overlook this because they don't want to have to do this, but asking executives to also do the same, because their networks tend to be very connected and they tend to be the perfect target audiences. So if you can get your executives to share through their business social networks, it can only help, or their regular social networks, depending on, who their target markets are. So that's definitely key. So again, it's sort of the what's the story, what are you trying to push? It's a news release, you released a white paper, you build out your media list, you get it out through either email or through newswire services, you track down the reporters through social media platforms if you're having a hard time with that, you get it published, and then you use that opportunity to push that out to your market to say, hey, look at this. And you look at the support that we've also got through the media on this white paper as well. So it's a great way to just tie all this together.
Yeah, and I feel like there's an efficiency there too, because you're starting out with really a piece of content that you're then turning into other smaller
Multiple, yeah,
that go everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And you can do that with video. You can take certain clips out of videos and use that and share them on social in pieces. You have to share a 2-minute video, but maybe you take a 10-second clip of that and you share that piece of it.
Yeah, that's something I feel like we always, when we were working with clients, always tried to do was give them this starter dough, I guess.
Right.
That they could use to make a lot of different loaves of bread with.
Right.
That's a strange metaphor. It must be that everybody's baking now.
What's that, baking?
Everybody's baking, so that's in the gestalt.
Exactly.
Although I am not baking, I will confess. So we had a couple other things that we wanted to dive into, but before we do, I wanted to get to, there were some questions here. Ryan asks, one concern that we have is that marketing channels are getting flooded. We've seen a gradual drop off in webinar attendance as time has gone on. And I feel like that may be correlated to lower demand and higher supply of other content jockeying for attention. How do you strike the balance, not irritate the customer to the point of unsubscribing, not because your marketing inflow is so high, but because the high influx of everyone's digital?
I'll let you cover that. Let's say that. Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
So Ryan was Ryan's. I guess they're seeing that marketing channels are feeling flooded, and they're offering webinars, I guess, and they're seeing a gradual drop off in webinar attendance, and too much other content jockeying for attention. How do you strike the balance and not irritate customers to the point of unsubscribing?
Right, yeah, you definitely need to strike a good balance, and you need to be smart about that. I mean, I think everybody's they're doing webinars right now. There is a little bit of a drop off, and I guess what we're anticipating, there'll be more of a drop off as we are able to actually, meet with people and talk to people in the same rooms. But there is a balance, and it's hard to give a specific answer to that without actually knowing the target market and what you're trying to do. But you don't want to irritate somebody and send them an e-blast, like multiple times a week or anything like that. You do want to be relatively careful, and people like information. They like to be educated. They don't necessarily want sales pitches 24/7. So you have to look at all the components to your business and how can you message this, or how can you get your word out in an effective way. And a lot of clients that we work with, we make sure to communicate to them is, look, you don't always want to be selling product. You might want to be telling them about some industry news, or you might want to tell them about somebody who had a baby in the office, or things that people will smile about. And you want to make sure that a lot of those other components are integrated into your overall marketing plan. But I think to his question, it's really taking a look at your clients, and definitely trying to balance, just bombarding them with data constantly versus making it informative and tasteful and meaningful, and that's helpful. And I think if you see a drop off in engagement, that's a sign.
Yeah, a thing that I would add to that, all of that makes total sense, and I'd add that one way to if you're seeing that drop off in engagement, if you're beginning to see an uptick on unsubscribes, you may want to look at the segments of your list, or if you don't have your list segmented, then you might want to segment it and make sure that you're delivering the most relevant content to everybody that you send an email to, because you can blast your whole list with stuff that might only be really relevant for half the people on it. And you're definitely right that we're, you know, sort of saturated with content coming at us. But I think that is all the more reason why valuable content presented in context is a problem solver for the person getting the email, not a distraction. So that would be one thought. And Marketo recently released some data on this. You know, if people are sending a lot of emails right now, make sure they're relevant, make sure that you're segmenting your list more carefully. If you start to see unsubscribes, you know, don't necessarily stop sending email, but just look at who you're sending it to.
Right.
You know, and another cautionary tale there is too, which is going to sound almost counterintuitive, but if you were sending a really high volume of email and all of a sudden you stop, that also is going to impact your deliverability. So you want to be careful to gradually ease off, because what you're going to do, the email service providers out there are going to see less email coming from you and more, you know, holdover, you know, junk mail flaggings and things like that. And so your ratio of potential complaint to positively delivered email is going to go down or go up. And so that could actually hurt you. So it's almost like if you're going to send less, wean off it. Don't just turn the faucet off, because that could hurt your deliverability long term. We have somebody else who's wondering, maybe Linda, how you would strategize around this. And I guess we should probably make this the last question. We're at 12:01. This really flew by, so thank you for that. Can you think of a way that a regular complimentary educational webinar could be counted as newsworthy?
Yeah, I mean, I think if it's an educational webinar, I mean, you could do a release on something like that if it's free, and it's educational. It has to be educational. You really can't be selling something. So a lot of times things will be educational, but at the end of it, you know, try to sell you something. But if that's the case, you know, I wouldn't make that as a sort of a PR event. But I think if you are like honestly trying to educate your consumer, yes, and there's value to the consumer, absolutely, you can use that as an opportunity, and I would definitely do that. If it's free, if it's educational, if you think that it will benefit them, definitely.
Yeah, I agree. I think again, it comes back to that idea of you know, does it solve a problem for me?
Right, exactly.
So, well, we are now at 2 minutes over, so I am going to thank everybody out there for joining us today. I hope that we were helpful. If you have questions afterwards, Linda, you had put your email address in here, I think, and
yes.
Let's see, and my email address is eburden@mcleancommunications.com. Feel free to shoot us a note, ask some follow-up questions, and with that, I will, let's see, I'll switch to our thank you for attending slide. We'll have a recorded presentation available shortly on nhbr.com if you didn't get a chance to see the whole thing, although I suppose that would mean you came in late, not left early. Anyway, thanks, Linda. It's good to see you. Hopefully in person again soon, and we're doing things like these as you know, it's nice breakfast seminars or things like that.
Right, exactly. Yes, thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining in. Great.
Thank you.